Hi again then guys, and welcome to a special projects replica build, and we haven't done one of these for a few weeks now, and this was actually a suggested replica, so thank you for that. And I hadn't actually thought of doing this one, but it's a genuinely deserved replica, and it's kind of a strange occasion to have a replica, because this is one of those cars, the Nissan R390 GT1 street version, or road car. This is a car that has never had accurate specs in the entire history of Gran Turismo. Now, sources are different in the amount of power that they quote this car as having. Some sources do say 350 horsepower, but most sources say 550. So it's kind of strange that this car has always had 350 horsepower. Now that does allow you to use it in power restricted events, and that really came in handy back in the Gran Turismo 2 days, for instance. Now, it just doesn't really have that effectiveness that it had back then, because we don't have as many events like that anymore. So, the purpose of this replica is a very simple one: to make an accurate representation of what the R390 road car should already be like when you buy it. Now, as far as the visuals, you don't actually need to do anything to the car. I would, however, if you want the correct replica, leave it in the blue that it comes in. Now, by definition, the blue does not have a name, so once you've changed the colour, you can't get it back. So if you want it to be totally authentic, you'll either need to have kept it in blue or buy a new car. Now that's a lot of cash, so I'd completely understand if you just want to paint it a different blue. That's fair enough. I'd probably do the same, but well, actually, I didn't do the same. I bought another car because mine was silver. But that being said, whatever. Now, for the tuning side of things, we'll run through that as we usually would, and then we'll take it out to the Le Mans to see the kind of performance that the accurate numbers give the car. Now, as far as its specs, in particular the PP level, on a vehicle like this, it's just not really as important. As you can see, 600 pp is not far off, so if you want to try and round it off, by all means do so, but that's just not the purpose of this build. It's purely to replicate the performance of the car. Now, I've upgraded it to sports softs instead of sports hards. You don't have to do that, I just wanted to give it that advantage. As far as suspension, I've left it stock, which is actually still, as you can see, racing suspension anyway. I've evened out the ride height to 80 and then evened out the camber to 1 degree front and rear. You could change it if you want to, of course, but that's just what I've gone for. We'll come back to the gearbox in just a second, and it gets interesting when it comes to the gearbox. As far as the diff, I've gone halfway on initial torque, as low as possible on both acceleration and braking, as you can see. Technically speaking, you don't need to change it at all if you don't want to. And if you do change it, of course, you could go for other settings if you already know some that work better for you. As far as power, of course, you want 550 horsepower. There are a couple of different ways that you can do that. You could do the full engine tune, for instance. I opted to go for the high-range turbo, and as you can see, the sports cat, plus, importantly, an oil change. Then reduced it down to 99.6% power to give us that correct amount of power. And then for the weight, again, very interestingly, the weight is off on the car in the game. It's apparently, according to multiple sources, 1,098 kilos, which is a lot lighter than they present it as being. So again, very strange in that regard. Now, I've done the stage 3 weight reduction, as you can see, added 1 kilo of ballast to bring up to the correct weight, and I'm running the full downforce, and you will need to run that under consideration because I've built the gearbox according to that. Now, speaking of the gearbox, which, as I mentioned, gets a little bit hazy as far as realism goes, I wasn't able to find what the real ratios of the car are, and that's where it gets interesting. Because with the gear ratios that it already comes with, you can only hit around 150 miles per hour, which is clearly not accurate to real life given the 550 horsepower. So what I opted to do, and you don't necessarily need to do this, you could go for a completely different setup or a stock one, whatever you want, but what I've done is I've done a gearbox glitch, or a gearbox flip, to keep all of the individual ratios that you started with, but then we've extended the final drive. So the gears themselves feel the same, but overall it's longer to allow you to hit a more accurate to real life speed. And if you want to do that, which is, as I said, what I've done, you want to take your auto setting to 137, as I have, then take your final drive up to 4, then come back to your auto setting, click it down and up a peg, and then that will allow you to hit all of these individual gears, and the gears are the same as stock: 3083, 2286, 1786, 1471, 1238 and 1077. Now with those gear ratios and that final drive of 2.7, this car can hit around 186 miles per hour on Route X. You can get it up around 180 on the Le Mans quite comfortably, but as I said, that's with full downforce, and you're running just before the red line. So if you choose to lower the downforce, you will top out. So if you want to get more top speed out of it, which it can do, it can go over 200, then you will want to drop the final drive maybe to 2.6 or even 2.5 to do that. But as I said, this is running full downforce as more of a track car, so it depends what you want from the vehicle. Overall though, that's it for the tune. So now all that remains, of course, is to see what this accurate representation of this legendary car actually feels like to drive. Now the funny thing for me personally about the R390 road car is that originally I did not like this car at all. Back when I was first introduced to it on Gran Turismo 2, I just didn't like the look of it. Now though, I feel completely the opposite. It's one of my favourite homologation specials, and of course to this day it's still one of the rarest. Performance wise, as I said, you're looking at around 186, 190 top out, which is accurate, depending on downforce obviously. That's pretty accurate to real life. Some quote around 220 miles per hour. That's possible, but doesn't seem very likely given the aerodynamics and the power, especially in long tail form that has more downforce anyway. But regardless, I hope you have a lot of fun with this updated tune to experience what the car arguably should feel like already on the game. But overall, I hope you have a lot of fun with it, as I said, and there are plenty more replicas and customs on the channel to check out. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.